Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I am your host, TruePowerIsMine, and this is TPIM SR Live. With today's guest is two-star Major General, retired, Peter James Gravett, the author of the book From East Garrison to Ranch House. I'm going to pull that up for the people who can see. Tremendous man, devoted his life not only to nation and family, but also to community. It is my extreme honor and pleasure to present to you all the General.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick. It's an honor for me to be on your show.
Thank you, sir. Just real quick, would you like to share anything extra with the people, about your past accomplishments?
If you like to.
Yes. Well, we can get in to the book at this point as well too. The main reason why I did bring the General onto the show was to talk about the book From East Garrison to Ranch Home. Sir, what motivated you to write this particular book?
Well, friends and family, and I'll say it like that because my adult career has been punctuated by 4 different careers, professional careers, and they thought that my background was kind of unique. My experience was unique, and I should tell my story. And those 4 professional careers were law enforcement. I was with the Los Angeles Police Department for over 20 years.
Wow.
I was also in the California Army National Guard at the same time, simultaneously with the LA Police Department. But then after I retired and left the police department, I returned to active duty with the Army, where I served another 20 years in the Army. And then also I had a career in government. I was served in the California Governor's Cabinet as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And also I was appointed by the Assistant Secretary of Defense in a high-level Defense Department office. And so all those kind of spanned a time of over 40 years. And so I wrote the book about that. I kind of weave, in the book itself, I weave between each of those careers and kind of put those in perspective in terms of chronology.
Gotcha. That is such an impressive, career. Was that General Mattis that actually appointed you?
No, it was not. Actually, I was appointed long before then. But let me go back a little bit. Your readers your audience may want to know my background going further back. I'm from a family of 14, 12 children from the same mother and father, I might add. And we hail from Little Rock, Arkansas, which is where I was born. And when my parents had 8 children, they migrated to Southern California. And I was among the first 8. And then after they arrived here, my parents had 4 additional children. But we were raised in the Los Angeles Harbor area, the beach area of Los Angeles, area called San Pedro. And any of your listeners are in the LA area, you know what San Pedro is. It's a beach area of Los Angeles. And that's kind of where I grew up and went to high school and go on from there.
Now, you had a total, I guess, a little bit of a culture shock coming probably from kind of semi-rural Little Rock to, California as far as the racial dynamics.
Well, it was a culture shock from my parents and my older brothers and sisters when they came out to California. Coming from a segregated Jim Crow South, as I mentioned in my book, to integrated, almost integrated Southern California, where the schools, have always been integrated in Southern California, and so on and so forth. So it was a change of dynamics, a change of culture for the entire family. And San Pedro itself is a multicultural community, primarily of Italians, Greeks, Yugoslavians, Hispanics, and blacks, all mixed together and have been for 100 years.
Wow. So, I mean, is there any type of I guess, like self-imposed segregation that you noticed when you went out there, where people kind of still, even though there is a melting pot provided, but they do it upon themselves to segregate, or did everyone truly integrate?
Well, they do, and to be clear, San Pedro is not a city. San Pedro is a community within the city of Los Angeles. You probably know that Los Angeles has about 112 different named neighborhoods.
Yes.
And San Pedro is one of them. It's at the beach area, and some people think of it as a separate city. It's not. It's part of the city of Los Angeles, and it's always been a melting pot because of the fact that the harbor is there, and the ships coming and going, and seamen coming and going, and the military, the Navy bases there, and they had an Army base there for many years. So all of that going on, it just kind of made a melting pot of people. Now, the area that I'm from in San Pedro was a public housing project called Channel Heights, because it was on the heights overlooking the channel, the shipping channel.
Right.
And that was a totally integrated neighborhood, starting from the time it was built in the mid-1940s. It's always been integrated, and with no majority of anything. And so all the schools and all my upbringing were in integrated classrooms.
So did that help you really, like, later on? Do you think growing up in that multi-diverse ethnic situation truly helped you in your ability to command other men and women later on in life?
I think it did. I think it did, because I had an appreciation of what other people thought about each other. And so I had experienced that growing up. So I joined I started my military career right after high school, where I joined the California Army National Guard, and then I talked about my early years in the Army National Guard, and also starting college at that time, and balancing college and my part-time military duty as a National Guardsman. And then later on, of course, as I rose through the enlisted ranks, I was a sergeant first class. That's an E7 for military people. I was an E7 by the time I attended officer candidate school.
Wow.
So I went to OCS and was commissioned as second lieutenant. And I remained in the California National Guard as an officer while pursuing a full-time career with the Los Angeles Police Department.
Now, how high did you go up in the ranks in the PD?
Now, in the police department, I went through all the patrolman ranks. I was a detective, and my last rank was I was a watch commander. At one of the divisions, I was a watch commander, and it's a mid-management position that's in charge of a watch or a shift, if you will. And so I was a watch commander, and while I was doing that, I was also rising through the ranks in the National Guard. By that time, I had promoted from second lieutenant to first lieutenant, and then to captain.
Wow.
And then later on, I promoted to major, and then lieutenant colonel.
Yes.
And so when I retired from the police department, I was lieutenant colonel. That's when I returned to active duty. And then I remained in the full-time military and was promoted from lieutenant colonel to full colonel, and then to one-star brigadier general, and then two-star major general. But there's a lot of years in between there, so, and my book talks about that, so that's kind of what I want to get into.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I feel so, I mean, just that there's so much pride, you know. I mean, I know pride is one of those funny things, but the level of dedication it took for you to achieve all of that. How fast did you rank up in your enlisting years, from the time you took your oath at the MEP station to the time you was a first sergeant?
Well, I was a sergeant first class, which is one step below first sergeant. But I got to tell you, I think it was a record, because from the time I joined as a private E1 until I promoted to sergeant first class E7, I had been in the military 10 years as an enlisted soldier. I did that in 10 years. And normally, I guess that would take a little bit more than that.
I mean, it goes without saying your IQ must be off the chart. and also your physical endurance as well. So yes, let's get into the book. Could you set us up with the book?
Well, I selected the title of the book because it's a chronology of my career. It traces colored soldiers from 1941 to living in East Garrison, and I'll get to that in a minute, a trek through life all the way to the ranch house. East Garrison was the eastern side of the post where colored soldiers were housed in the segregated army. And the ranch house was on the western part of the post for white soldiers. And the ranch house was a former Mexican hacienda, if you will, was the home of the commanding general. And so what I do is I trace the soldiers, the colored soldiers from colored to Negro to black through the 1940s, 50s, 60s, all the way through up until the time that a African-American general occupied the ranch house as the first black in the ranch house. And that was myself. Now, in the book, I also talk about the segregation that was in the Army back in the 1940s. And I was amazed how, I mean, I knew the Army was segregated. Everybody kind of knew the military was segregated. But to the extent of segregation, it was just alarming. It was just alarming. And I did some research, and let me set the stage for Camp Roberts. The ranch house and the East Garrison are both located at an Army installation called Camp Roberts. And Camp Roberts is on the California coast, halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. It's probably about in the middle. It's on the central coast, and it's now a reserve military post, but it was active back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And but during the 1940s and World War II, East Garrison, that's where the colored soldiers were housed, they were in tents in a less desirable terrain in the East Garrison. And during the war, that's where they brought Italian and German prisoners of war from the European theater.
All the way out
they
there.
Brought them to the U.S., and they were housed in various military installations around the country, but one of them was Camp Roberts. And I talked extensively about the honors and privileges that the Italian and German prisoners of war received that the American military soldiers, who happen to be colored, did not receive.
Wow. Wow. Could you just share
and I'll give you a couple examples of that, and I talk about these. For example, when the war started and they started housing colored soldiers, I use the word colored because that's what was used by the Army back in those days. At East Garrison, there were no barracks, if you will. There were no places in the state, so they were housed in tents. So when the Italian and German prisoners started coming in, and think about this, the German and Italian prisoners are white.
Right.
The colored soldiers had to build barracks for the prisoners of war. While they themselves were sleeping in tents on cots. And the prisoners, our enemy, were in bunks and beds and mattress and blankets, and the colored soldiers were on cots in a sleeping bag on the ground.
I got pictures up right now, General, for the TV viewers following along so that they can see. And, I have an image of an African-American soldier, black colored soldier. And he has like a platoon of, it looks like Germans, World War II prisoners in the forest, probably the Black Forest in Bulgaria. This is true history we are hearing tonight. And real quick, General, this is coming from Brother David, a show contributor. Ask the General about the triple nickel.
Okay, the triple nickel, 555, is the 555th Parachute Regiment. And it was an all-black parachute regiment. You see, what happened was the American Army first of all, did not believe that Negro soldiers were capable of being paratroopers. They thought they were afraid to jump out of airplanes. Well, but after much coercion by Eleanor Roosevelt at the time and black newspapers, a black regiment was formed. It was called 555, and they went through parachute training in the military in the South. Well, they trained them and they were qualified, but then they did not deploy them to the European theater to be involved in the war. Why? They believed that the American paratroopers were not capable of jumping out of an airplane and fighting. So what they did was they used them as fire jumpers, if you will, in the Northwest, where they flew over the dense forest in the Northwest, Oregon and Washington and Idaho, to fight forest fires. And they never did get into combat in the European theater.
So these men, not that they wasted their time training for combat and frontline actions, they were denied because they felt that these men were in some way, shape, or form cowards?
It goes back even further than that. Just when they believed that blacks couldn't fly airplanes, and they didn't think that blacks were capable of sailing on Navy ships, and didn't think that blacks were capable of firing artillery and serving in tanks. And so it goes back to the whole trend where the American military establishment back in the early 1940s didn't believe that blacks were capable of doing all the things that white soldiers did. And so here are these soldiers who volunteered to be paratroopers, trained, believing that they would be gone into combat to help the American cause, were never deployed, and they were given a civilian role, if you will, in the Northwest as fire jumpers, they call them.
That is so alien of a mindset. I mean, it's one thing, General, if a person, a human being, was proven to be a coward. Yes, obviously, you do not want to send that individual into combat. But when you have motivated, intelligent, physically fit, and driven men willing and able to do that effective combat role, that really did a disservice to our nation. And think how many men that weren't up to the grade lost their lives in operations due to this misunderstanding or basically racist concept that black men and women cannot achieve on the same level as any other man or woman on this planet.
Exactly. And it took many decades to overcome that. In my book, I talk about, and I think all your viewers and listeners will be interested in learning about the artillery, because in my book, I talk about the fact that, when I was in OCS, Officer Candidate School, and my preference for branch was artillery, field artillery. And, the officers in charge had a discussion about the fact that, we can't give him that artillery branch because artillery requires a lot of mathematical equations, and blacks can't do math quite well. And even though the fact that I had a degree in criminalistics, which required a lot of higher mathematics, but even further than that, I mean, didn't they know that the blacks built the pyramids?
Right.
And so on and so forth. But also, blacks have been in artillery in the American Army since long before the Civil War. They had black artillery regiments. And so it's just a lack of knowledge, and so prejudicial that they were blinded by racism.
Yes.
Blinded by racism. And if I can just go back a minute, because I missed one point. I wanted to talk about those POWs. The German and the Italian POWs at Camp Roberts were allowed passes to leave the post and to go into town and visit Italian and German families on their special days, have wine, have dinner, because the Camp Roberts community, the area around Camp Roberts, is a wine growing area, a lot of vineyards there. German and Italian families having vineyards. And they hosted these German and Italian prisoners of war, where they came and picked them up, took them to their home, wined and dined them on wine and nice meals, and brought them back. At the same time, the colored soldiers, who were their guards, couldn't leave the post.
For fear of what? I mean, just because they were they scared that they're going to run away or something crazy?
No, they had no place to go because the town was a white town, and pretty much all the facilities were white owned, and and didn't cater to blacks. But the Italians and German prisoners could go into town and visit people.
Wow.
And all the guards for the Italian and German prisoners were black. They didn't have any white guards. They were all black military policemen. And their charges, in other words, their prisoners had more privileges than they had.
So, General, are you suggesting the black correctional or MP officers cannot put their hands on these white POWs if they got out of line?
Oh, they could. I'm certain that they could. I didn't go that far. I didn't say that, but these prisoners had it so well, so fine. It was compared to what they had in Germany and Italy fighting the war. They had it made. They were in a brand new facility, brand new barracks. They had a bed. They had a mattress. They had blankets. They had 3 meals a day. They could go into town, have dinner with Italian and German families. So there was nobody getting out of line. As a matter of fact, I'm told that, and I've done some research on this, that at the end of the war, most of them did not want to return to Europe. And in fact, a lot of them stayed in California after the war.
Oh my God. Please tell me they did not get citizenship and were able to vote and run for office.
Well, I don't know about that. I didn't see that, but I was certain that if they stayed here and had a family, and then somewhere down the line, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren may have done some things like that. But that's quite interesting. But anyway, so in talking about what took place on East Garrison, where these colored soldiers were guarding the POWs, the colored soldiers could not generally come to West Garrison on the other side of the highway, and this post is bisected by U.S. Highway 101, which is called Pacific Coast Highway. On the west side, where the white soldiers were, where all the major facilities were, the swimming pool, the PX, the commissary, all those kinds of things. And blacks could only use a swimming pool like an hour or two a week, and it was open to the white POWs 7 days a week. And blacks only had a 2-hour period that they could use a swimming pool. And probably if the Army could have drained the pool after the blacks used it, probably would have. And refilled it. But and then as far as the PX goes, on the East Garrison where the colored soldiers were, there was a small PX, post exchange, where you can buy sundries and incidentals, cigarettes, and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, the POWs received free cigarettes.
No way.
And and colored soldiers didn't. Small things like that. But
that's not small, sir. That's not small. As you're saying this, it's like you're transporting me to a time in history that common sense and rational thinking obviously was not the norm.
It was not. It was not. But Patrick, my book is really not solely about segregation in the Army. That's just a small piece of it. And that's a snippet of it. And I just give you a preview.
Yes.
But what the book does, it traces my career overlapping the Army with the police department, Los Angeles Police Department, of the assignments I had in the police department and what was going on in my assignments, and at the same time what was going on in the California National Guard, and so on and so forth. And because in the police department I had a full career of over 20 years, And I have served in all the major functions in the police department, administration, logistics, traffic, patrol,
What was the major
records,
case you worked?
detectives, homicide. I had a full career, and I talk about each of those assignments and some of the major events that took place involving me while I was in the police department. So I think, and I've kind of had a chronology of how those weaved in with my simultaneous career with the National Guard, which is like a part-time military. And then, of course, after so many years of being dual-hatted as a soldier and a policeman, and when I became a full-time soldier, then I talk a lot about all the assignments I have, and I touch on different things that happened in the various countries that I served in, which was, I think it was over 8 or 9 countries that I served in, in the military.
Well, you know, I want to ask you, General, because you're actually coming from this. You know, I mean, even though you wrote a book, you actually lived some of this. Seeing this adverse racism, I don't know if you saw it in the police department and other aspects, but how did it not turn you, sir, into an extremely bitter and hateful individual?
Well, you know, it's not just me. I mean, a lot of people, black people, weather the storm. You look at things as they are, and you have a choice. Do you want to make things better, or do you accept things the way they are? I chose not to accept things as they were. Yes, and for the time that I entered the military, without making a lot of waves, I made it very clear that, you know, I'm an individual, you know, and whatever thought you have about other ethnic groups, you know, I'm me. You can talk about me. And so every position I had in the military, for example, I did the best I could. And I always wanted to outperform somebody else. And in the military, that you know, when you're outperforming everybody, or at least almost everybody, it shows. It'll show up. And I did that. I tried to make a name for myself. I tried to do the best job I could. And now I got to tell you that, you know, I didn't have a lot of mentors in the military. You know, I didn't. You know, and I had a couple, and those were white, by the way. But I did the best job I could, and I worked hard. But I always wanted to be a step ahead of the game in terms of my civilian education and my military educational requirements, and seeking out the best assignments, and seeking a lot senior people than me to talk to them about, what do you think my next assignment should be, and how can I get there, and how can I work to get there, and what's required. And then once you you don't get every assignment that you want, some you don't get, and the assignments that you don't want, those are the ones you work the hardest with.
See, I have a real quick question from the chat room. This is from Sammy. A question: the Nazis imprisoned their Jews. How was this discovered?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
The Nazis imprisoned their Jews. How was this discovered?
How discovered?
Yeah. I mean, how was it, or who discovered, I guess, the imprisoned Jews?
Well, you know, in doing my research for the book, I ran across a study that was done. It was called Soldiers in Paradise, was the name of it, and it was a study done about the POWs at Camp Roberts, how they felt that they were in paradise with all the niceties that they received. And also I had a lot of newspaper clippings from the area going back to the 1940s that I uncovered that talked about things at that camp. And by the way, Camp Roberts was not unique. Other camps around the country had similar situations where POWs, prisoners of war, had better situations every day than black soldiers had.
Surely, General, though, there were stories or news articles about prison abuse or prisoners coming up dead or beaten. Surely that had to happen.
I didn't see any of that. Okay. And the reason I probably didn't see it is because probably no one would write about it and make that public at the time. Okay. You know, understand, back in the 1940s, newspapers were censored, you know, in terms of what they could write about for the military, you know. And so I'm certain that there was some of that, but it was never written about, not that I could uncover. I know that as I said, the prisoners did not want to go home when the war was over. A lot of them did not. Some did. Those that have families wanted to go, but some others, you know, were in paradise, you know, and just as that study says, prisoners in paradise, they thought they had a good thing going.
Oh, no. Okay, I messed up. I messed up on that question. It was basically, this is from Sammy in the chat room again. They were alluding to a black regiment discovers the imprisonment of Jews first. And these were the original Panthers under the famous General Patton.
Okay, yes, that's true. They were part of General Patton's Third Army, and yes, they were the ones that first entered Dachau, the prisoner of war camp in Poland, Dachau, and I'm sorry, in southern Germany, and they're the ones that drove a tank through the gate.
Oh my God!
And liberated that prisoner of war camp, and the prisoners, those that were still alive, and there were few because they had killed, exterminated several 100,000 as part of the 6 million overall in the various POW camps throughout Europe. Yes, it was a black tank regiment, that 761st Tank Regiment, that actually liberated Dachau.
That's so amazing, because you're actually a tank commander, are you not?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was. I spent a lot of years in tank, and as it turned out, when I was a commanding general of a division, I commanded a mechanized infantry division, but my division had more tanks than I had infantry fighting vehicles. So yes, I'm basically a tanker.
This is what I'm saying. This is so awesome about history. We're getting some real firsthand historical military history tonight. You know, that obviously and honestly a lot of mainstream media doesn't care about. They don't, you know, they'll show you the highlights, you know, the dropping of Hiroshima, the bomb and all this, the soldier or the sailor kissing the girl, Times Square, but they won't show you about the contribution us folks, us black folks, African Americans, melanated, however you want to say it, our contribution to this thing that we call humanity.
You know, it's only been recently that we have some black directors and producers in Hollywood and other places that are willing to make film and documentaries on blacks in history, not just military, but blacks in general in history. You know, people like Spike Lee and others who have done some great work in showing the American public some historical black successes in the military and in civilian life.
Yeah, you know,
but you know, the black public know about Buffalo Soldiers generally and about Tuskegee Airmen generally. But you know, the Buffalo Soldiers, you know, were organized in 1866, and they were disbanded in 1944. So they had a 80-year history, and so a lot to write about there.
Yes.
And of course, Tuskegee Airmen first started training in 1941, and that was until 1946 when they totally disbanded those units, and then in 1948 when the Air Force was created, separate from the Army. So a lot is written about Tuskegee Airmen and Buffalo Soldiers, but you don't write about specifics, like the artillery I mentioned before,
Yes.
and the 555 regiment of paratroopers, and they don't talk a lot about the all black WACs in World War II, and how there was a battalion of black WACs in World War II, and the 3668 Central Postal Battalion, who sorted the mail in Europe and then other parts of, in England and other parts of Europe. And they're the ones that got the mail to everybody, you know. And so there are things that people don't know about that they should.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm so thankful, sir, that because you could be doing things, you could be enjoying the grandchildren, playing golf, going on a cruise, but you elect to write books. You elect to come on shows and give an oral presentation of this history. And this stuff if it wasn't for those men and women, however you want to chop it up, that fought the war, World War II, we would be speaking German now.
You have that right. Exactly. And instead of having that peace symbol that America saw back in the Vietnam days, there'd be a swastika, So
exactly. Exactly. And that's what I mean. I had a senior chief on, Senior Chief Don Shipley, retired U.S. Navy SEALs a few months ago, and we were talking about the military and how we're failing to meet our recruitment goals, sir. For various reasons. Some could argue we kind of got back in that 60s mindsets where, the military sucks, blah, blah, blah. But now, even though you was coming from an extremely racist situation, could you please share with us how the military, just in respects of finances alone, helped you facilitate a life that you enjoy to this day?
Well, family support. My father was in the Army in World War II. He was drafted. My father had 8 children when he was drafted, and he went off into the Army. And my mother was a homemaker. She had 8 children at the time. The oldest, I think, was about 10 or 11 years old, and she was not working. But somehow they got by with script and so on and so forth. But my father instilled in all of his sons years later, over the years, is that make a name for yourself and be proud of who you are, and so on and so forth. So of his 9 boys, 8 served in the Army. 5 were drafted and 3 joined at different times over the years, and they used the resources that they had to get by. The military didn't pay a lot. It does now, by the way. Didn't pay a lot, and so you have to husband those resources, those sacred funds, to make ends meet with your family and your children. And so, in my case, by the time I returned to the military full time after my police career, I had promoted to lieutenant colonel. So I had it. I won't say well, but I was financially secure.
Yes.
So I never had any financial problems in the military.
Wow. So you know that I did a show when Trump did the government shutdown, and unbeknownst to me, actually it was Rondi Rocky Harper. She was a officer in the Coast Guard, but brought it to my attention that over 40% of the military qualifies for WIC. And, that's for women who are pregnant. You give them the cheese and like the prenatal stuff that they need.
Right.
But the whole point to this is that, do you not see it as a national fundamental security issue that our armed forces aren't dealt with in a way that they are, even at the enlistment level, financially secure, meaning that if we have another government shutdown situation, men and women in our Coast Guard, men and women in the armed forces, such as the Navy and the Army and Air Force, do not see any adverse effect financially from these activities politically.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's really tragic, where the Americans' first line of defense is their military, and when the government shut down, not paying them their salaries, while at the same time those high-level government officials, appointed officials, most of them are millionaires and billionaires because they're friends of the commander-in-chief,
yes,
didn't suffer a meal loss. They didn't suffer anything lost. And so, you know, the military is a cross-section of American society.
Yes.
And so everybody suffers when the government shut down, you know, and to shut it down for political reasons like that, it was devastating enough. But then for military personnel to look for food handouts and
yes.
WIC, as you say, and food stamps and food banks,
yes.
and food pantries to subsist on was unconscionable.
Yes.
And I think every American, no matter what your religion or a political party or whatever, you should be just astounded that America, the greatest country in the world, as they say, will allow this to happen.
Righteous. What a righteous answer, guys. What a righteous, honest answer. You know, I wish we had more people in leadership, sir, with your type of understanding of the facts than what we have presently.
Well, what you don't see right now, and I won't go into it a lot because I don't want to get political here, but what you don't see right now is that a lot of senior leaders in American military, very senior, more stars than I have, are leaving the military because they're disenchanted with the way the country is going with the leadership. Quite a few are leaving. And that's tragic. That has never happened before in the history of our country that I know of.
No.
You know,
it has happened in the history of the Roman Empire, the history of the Greek Empire, Egyptian, and all other falling empires. Once our leadership, the cream of the crop, because, ladies and gentlemen, people like General Gravett and others are the cream of the crop. That's what they get those stars, not just because they hand them out at the Pentagon. They get them because they earned them. And that's something that we all should remember. Our freedom, yes, it is ordained by God, but it's up to us to ensure it. And it's up to us to support those warriors on the front lines, on the back lines, in logistics, and all throughout the process of warfare. Because this is one inescapable reality to the world in which we live. There are a lot of people, entities, organizations that hate us collectively. They don't see you as white. They don't see you as black. They don't see you as anything other than them. And once you realize this, you will see what a service that all have done that served.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. You know, this country, even before the current administration came in, had challenges. We've always had challenges, but we've always managed to overcome them with everybody working together. You know, back in World War II, when the entire country came together to support everybody, and so on and so forth. And, you know, at times the country is divided on certain issues, and that's understandable. That can happen in a democracy. It's okay to do that because you have freedom of speech.
Right.
And that's what democracy is, to be able to disagree with somebody, disagree with the government, and not be punished for it. It's called democracy. But I'll plant this seed. America is the only country in the world, only democracy in the world that I know of, where the military takes an oath to a piece of paper.
Yes, sir.
And that's the Constitution. We're the only country. All the other democratic countries, France, England, other democratic countries, when you come in the military, you take an oath to the potentate, the person in charge, the king, the queen, the president, the chancellor. And when that person leaves office, a new one comes in, they take a new oath to the new person that comes in. not in America. You take an oath one time, and that oath is that you will serve the commander-in-chief of the military. And the commander-in-chief, as you know, the president has three titles. He's the president of the United States. He's the commander-in-chief of military forces, and he serves as the adjunct governor of Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And so on the commander-in-chief part, that's the military part. And we take an oath to the Constitution and not to any particular president.
See, that's what I love, General, is we take an oath to the ideal of freedom, the ideal that you can worship the God that you want in the house on the land that you own, sir, and I can do the same with mine. Yeah. You know, and if we
and the thing is that, you know, Washington, D.C., if I can just say this, Washington, D.C. was built by blacks. The White House, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Memorial. I mean, that city would not exist without black labor. And it was slave labor. Some of it was slave labor. But then after Emancipation Proclamation, the things built after that, you know, wasn't. So, you know, we have a long history in this country of putting things together.
Well, let's just say it like this, General. Without us, there would be no history or country in this present state because of the blood, the work, you know, think about all the soldiers, Buffalo soldiers, taking pioneers from Missouri all the way, escorting them all the way out to California and all this, that, and the third. But I do have a question from Sister Hunt. She's a show contributor. With all the weapons and robot AI taking over the scenes, what is your vision of the future of the United States military with automated machines coming online?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. Technology is here to stay. It's being advanced more every single day. And that's why the military requires so much of their new enlistees, young people coming in, that they need to have a knowledge of how to operate these sophisticated weaponry that we have now and that's coming in the future. But the military will never do without the infantryman, the soldier on the ground. The person on the ground opposing the enemy face to face. No matter what kind of technology you have, or laser systems, or guided missiles, or this and that, it's a soldier on the ground that's going to take the parcel of land or give it back to who it belongs to with sophisticated weaponry. I can tell you this also is that I belong to an organization that's called the Fall Gathering. And the Fall Gathering is a group of retired generals and admirals from all the services, retired, and we meet in Washington, D.C. once a year. And we have a weekend of strategy and that sort of thing. And all of us know that national security is in jeopardy right now because only about 22 to 25% of young people age 18 to 25 are eligible to join the military. And that's because, number one, lack of a high school diploma, because of tattoos on the neck and face, because of criminal records, because of drugs, alcohol, because of a lot of different things. And then add to that those that don't want to join the military in that group. Right. So what you have is only about a quarter of American youth between the ages of 18 and 25 are not eligible to join or don't want to join. But those that do join and qualify have that knowledge already because of digital games that they play. And I tell you, you know, for example, I'm a tanker, as you mentioned. The Abrams tank, the M1A2 Abrams tank. Inside the tank, it's all digital. It's all digital. Computers. It's all computerized. And the young people that are 18 and 19 years old operate that piece of equipment that costs $5 million a piece to build. They can do it because they've worked with video games. It's just video games to them.
Yeah.
And it works. It works.
You know, General, out of the chat room, I have, this is from Brother David. Only officers, sir. Whom else can join? Could you say the organization, please, again?
Okay, the organization is called the Fall Gathering. Fall Gathering. And it's only for retired admirals from the Navy and Coast Guard and retired generals from the Army, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force. But they have a support staff and a full-time staff. And again, it's called a Fall Gathering. We have a website. And our job is to look at the future of the military from the Black perspective and to see what we can do to influence legislation, influence
public opinion
regulations to allow African American youth to have their slice of the pie.
That's it. That's what I'm talking about. The slice of the pie, baby. Instead of sitting here talking all this nonsense, oh, you don't want to go in the military, you could die, blah, 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 blah. What, you just sit there and just ride away on the street somewhere? Get up. Do something for yourself. Do something for your country. Do something for the future, the babies.
You know, the military is a good way to go for youth that they have no place to go. The military is always a place to go. You know, people say, well, you know, my son or my daughter, I don't want them hurt in combat. You know, speaking from a parent's point of view, what they don't realize is that for every single person that's in combat in another country, in the American military, face the enemy, there are 6 people behind the lines that are supporting them. The logisticians, the doctors, the nurses, the communications people, like the electronic people. I can go on and on and on. You know, that never see combat. You know, and a number of military people that never deploy outside the United States. They serve their entire career here in the United States. You know, so it's not all about combat. It's all about being able to acquire something, to gain leadership, to get an education at the government's expense, to be part of something greater than yourself, to leave the neighborhood if you don't like the neighborhood you're in. The military makes a great neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's a great community, and they all get along.
See, General, you know, I just want to ring this in so that the audience understand what I'm saying. There is no way around, if we are to have a nation that we continue in the present form, there's no way around men and women going into combat situation. But I'm glad that General answered the question the way he did, because believe it or not, the Army don't want to just grab anybody that doesn't want to go to combat. I mean, actual combat.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. If that's your motivation for joining the military is not the place for you.
Right. They really want people who understand that they are part of a bigger team, and you're going to do a job. Yes, you could get, but you know what? You could die on the streets up here in any city or any small town. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a lady die here in our small town, self-inflicted. So you can die anywhere.
Yeah, or get shot in some of our communities, you know, and shot and killed, and so on and so forth. So, you know, the military, right now, the pay is good, the training is great. You can be trained and leave the military and take that training with you into civilian life. And a lot of companies are looking to hire veterans.
Yes.
And some of these young people are leaving the military after 3 or 4 years at age 22, 23 years old with a lot of training that they are in demand by American industry. And veterans have a priority in being hired a lot of places.
Exactly. I just want to throw in there that AT&T is a well-known employer of military personnel. And AT&T jobs, dude, we're not talking about some a little Walmart gig. You're talking about something that you can actually raise a family on with that salary. Exactly.
That you and they all pay decent wages. Yes. But not only that, the military transform you from being an individualist and being a person only responsible for yourself to someone who is part of a team. And that team approach in the military, where your buddies is your family. And then when you leave the military and you have your own family, then you have already galvanized that concept in your mind that this is my family. I'm going to protect my family. I'm going to support my family. They support me. And that's what it's all about. And when you don't have that experience from being in the military, and I'm not saying everyone should go to the military, and I'm not saying that because everyone should not go to the military. But for those that do, they gained a lot of a common sense approach to being part of a team.
Yes, and you know, we can say what we will because I know everybody has their opinion about the military. You know, family members might have been lost. They might have grown up in a liberal, hippie, God-hating, abortion-loving, twisted society type situation. I get it. But you know what? You would not be able to enjoy these privileges that we're enjoying tonight, like me being able to call up Major General and have this open and honest discussion, if it wasn't for men, women, and children, in some cases, who lied on their entrance to get in, that served. And yes, they did lay down their lives. But you know what? And this is for the people who are fans of the show. You understand what I'm saying here. For every one of ours that goes, you better bet your bottom dollar a bunch more of theirs win. So, you know, let's keep it on, I guess, the non-political. Actually, I would really like to get back to your book, General, you know, because I can see we're just drifting away because I really want young men and women, not just black young men and women, but all young men and women to hear the general word and understand this words of wisdom can apply to your life and your life. Forget me, forget everyone else. Think about yourself now. Your life can be enriched by what the general has to say.
Well, I just want to say that you know, my book, and I hope people purchase the book not for any kind of profit, because there's no profit in this book. But purchase it for the purpose of reading some of the historical challenges that blacks have gone through, both in law enforcement, in government, in the military, and other places. All the profits from the book, and there's very little profit, is all donated to charity. There's no profit in my pocket at all. I did this out of goodness of my heart. It cost me quite a bit to self-publish the book, which I did. My wife and I did it together. And it's all being donated to charity. And again, the book is titled From East Garrison to the Ranch House. And East Garrison, again, where the soldiers had their challenges in tents in World War II. And the Ranch House is a Spanish hacienda, plush place where the general lived, and all those kind of things. And I was the very first African-American general to reside in the ranch house, and that's why I wrote the book.
You know, not only, I mean, just think, you were coming up during your active service years, was it like during the 70s and 80s?
Yes.
Okay, so that means that you were coming up, we had, who was that, Major, oh my God, he died in the F-14, or the experimental plane crash, the first black astronaut, Major.
Astronaut?
Yeah.
Yes.
You were coming up when these guys were coming up, finally, you know, the veil racism were finally coming back. You know, how much pride, sir, when you got your first star, did your family and friends show you? I mean, not pride, but how much happiness and filled with joy to see one of their own, you know, come into that?
I tell you what, it was overwhelming for me. You know, when it was overwhelming when I was first selected to be a brigadier general. Then the process works it through Congress and through the White House and so on and so forth, and that takes about a year before the actual pinning on of the star at the ceremony. But the ceremony itself, which is overwhelming, with over 1,000 people in attendance.
Wow.
And I was.
So as a general, real quick, I mean, as long as it's not classified, how many men and women typically are underneath your command? Just a ballpark figure.
As a division commander, I had just over 18,000 soldiers and about 57,000 family members, dependents.
Wow. That's an interesting way of looking at
that. An American Army division varies from 16,000 to about 20,000, based upon the type of division that it is. And I had a mechanized infantry division, and that I commanded.
Now, these are the heavy, what we classified as U.S. Army battle tanks.
Yes. The main battle, it's called the main battle tank, and most battle tanks are named after former generals. And the main battle tank that we use today is the Abrams tank, named for General Abrams, who was a general in Vietnam. And the latest tank is the M2A2 tank. I'm sorry, M1A2 tank.
What's the
M1A2 tank? Yes.
Do you happen to know the difference between that and the old Abrams M1? Like, do they have more cybernetic components? I would imagine.
The difference, there's a lot of difference. There's lots of difference. They look the same. The difference is that the main battle tank today has more electronic systems on it. Has a laser rangefinder, where if you see another tank across the battlefield, you laser it with a laser beam, and it comes back to you exactly how far that tank is and direction and so on and so forth before you fire the gun at the other tank. It's automatic. It's automatic. You know exactly where that tank is, how far it is within a twinkling of an eye, less than a second. And also the armament is larger. Instead of having a 110 millimeter cannon, and it has a 120 millimeter cannon. Has larger cannon, and it has larger. Without going into a lot of details, it has a lot more sophistication on it.
General, I know that we're already past the hour, but there's just one last question I have to ask you. Okay, and this is from basically a combination of Sister Arlene and Brother David. Ask the General, is he aware of blacks being killed by friendly fire, and has any experience with this?
My answer is no. I have no experience with that. I can tell you that in every war, in every tactical situation, there's always accidents where people are accidentally shot and killed by their own soldiers. If it's done intentionally, it's called fratricide. Fratricide is when one soldier kills another soldier. Yes. And most of fratricide situations, those are identified as fratricide as opposed to accidental. But no, I don't know of any situations where blacks were killed by other soldiers.
Excellent. Let's see, guys, that's I pride myself on always trying to get to their questions. Live shows won't even bother with the questions from the chat rooms, but our listeners' audience is so on point, so in tune. General, do you have anything else to share with us before we go?
Yes, I just want to say one more time, the book is called From East Garrison to the Ranch House. It's available on Amazon under that title, or my name, Peter, P-E-T-E-R, last name is Gravett, G-R-A-V-E-T-T, Peter Gravett, Major General. Either title, it's on Amazon. And again, all proceeds from the book are donated to charity, and the charity is to various disabled veteran organizations.
Now, General,
where the profits are donated to.
Real quick, do you have any social media outlets, maybe a Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, anything like that, sir?
No, I don't. That's in the works. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Well, I am on Facebook, yes.
Okay, so, but do you have like not like a fan page, but do you have some sort of I guess similar to a fan page where like maybe you post articles or anything like that?
I don't have that, but that's been developed.
Oh, okay. Well, once again, General, just for gravity of the situation, I just want to say thank you, sir, for your service to our nation, for your service to your family, and the service to our community. Also, I totally want to invite you back on. We can go more into the Buffalo Soldier aspect and then more of just a general, because I really like the second half of just the general flow, the general conversations. Maybe get your thoughts on Vietnam, get your thoughts on Korea, maybe how the geopolitical pendulum has moved since 1945. We adopted the New World liberal order as a nation.
Yes, I'd be happy to be on your program again, and I want to thank you for inviting me. And I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope your listeners and viewers have also enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir, and have a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, what a show, guys. What a show. Oh, man. Thank you for all the contributions, all the questions. This has been TPIM SR Live. I've been your host, TruePowerIsMine. Today's date, April 15, 2019, the year of our Lord. As always, live your life with integrity, without hate, envy, or greed. And as always, let's try to be kinder to each other. Peace.